Hey folks, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the Dungeons & Lasers Dwarven Mindset. This is from Archon Studio, and this is something that I've wanted to pick up since... actually, before it was out. So, this has been a long time coming, but I never pulled the trigger on it. Now, the reason I've finally made that move is because Archon Studio recently had a big Kickstarter. Unlike their previous Kickstarters, I was able to get in on this one. In the past, I've always either heard about it just after it finished, or I just didn't have the available funds at the time. This most recent Kickstarter was for a huge set of really cool looking caverns and caves. This came in several themes, including even the intestinal tracts of a giant monster. Super impressive, though I actually went for the more generic cave set because I think that'll just get more use on my table. So now that I had this giant set of caves on the way, it was a great excuse to, pull the trigger on the Dwarven Mines, because what leads into a set of caves better than a set of mines, right? Right? I just wanted the mines. Okay, the truth is, I mean, it's a great excuse to check out the quality of their work and to get a preview of what I've already pledged for in the Kickstarter. So we're going to put these together today, paint them up, have a look at them, and do a little review. Let's get started. I want to start by stating the obvious. The price on these kits is not fantastic. It's not bad either. It's about average for this kind of product, maybe a little bit low, but terrain is generally expensive, so that still doesn't leave it in a great spot. However, if you grab these while they're on GameFound or Kickstarter, then you're looking at a very significant price drop. I recognize that there is still a substantial buy-in, but done that way, it is the best deal you're likely to get on dungeon terrain outside of making it yourself. Now, there is a lot of plastic in this kit. A lot. And as soon as it's open, I noticed the high detail level. Lots of crisp, sharply designed textures that are going to be perfect for using with beginner-friendly paint styles. And that is exactly what I intend to do. A paint style that anyone could be able to pull off. But first, I have to do some plastic clipping. A lot of plastic clipping. It's an easy job using some side cutters and a knife to trim things up, but it's time consuming. So put on your favorite podcast or movie and brace for hand cramps. The box contains 6 identical sprues plus a sprue of clips and connectors. The set consists of short walls, long walls, doors, floor panels, lampposts, and torches. With 4 different short walls and 1 long and different textures on either side, it gives you 10 different wall textures, which is great variety. And when you finally got it all clipped out, you end up with this. Again, it's a lot of plastic. Now, I have preached this before on the channel, and I'm sure I will 100 more times. You should prime in a color that is close to where you want to land. Starting from brown will not only save me roughly 10 million years base coating, but it means that if I miss any spots in painting, those spots are just brown. They'll blend in. That makes the prime functionally a base coat too. My first actual layer of paint is going to be a broad overbrush of Talarn sand, basically a yellow ochre, over all of the stonework. Don't worry about being messy at this stage, just get the paint on there. It does not matter in the least if it hits the wood or metal pieces, just focus on speed. There are a lot of steps to do, and I didn't want to be spending the rest of the years of my life on this mine. From there, I basically just keep dry brushing up. I do a layer of Karak stone, very, very light brown over all of the stonework. This is done with a lighter hand than the previous dry brush step. You want to leave some of that ochre color showing through. After that, it's time to base coat the wooden beams. I am going to do another dry brush after, but that one is going to cover everything, providing both the final highlight for the stone and the beams. So this base coating has to come first. I just picked a dark brown for this, something that would offer some variety. There is a lot of brown in the set, so I at least want the shadow colors to be different. 2 things to note here. One is that you do have to be more careful now. You don't want this dark brown on your stones. You want as clear a line of separation between those two as you can manage. The other thing is that you don't have to get 100% coverage on the beams. If the paint remains slightly translucent in spots, that's perfectly fine. By the end, that's just going to be adding more variation to the wood. The wood follows the exact same process as the stone. A mid-tone highlight, this one is AK's cork brown, but any brown that is different from all of those other browns you're using is good for this. Once more, you want to leave that darkest shadow color still visible and just catch all the ridges and wood grain in a controlled dry brush. The doors are a notable exception to the other wooden bits. I want to use them to provide a pop of color in an otherwise somewhat drab mine setting. I picked out a bright red and a mellow green. However, they get the same mid-tone dry brush that all the other wood does, just to make them look old and a bit worn. They are in a mine after all. You may note, and I should clarify, I'm not trying to mimic the box art here. The box art is great, and I understand why people do that, but I prefer to follow my own creative impulses when painting. I never just go for the box art look, which is why you'll notice so much deviation from it. And then it's the final dry brush. At last, the final dry brush. This is Ushabti Bone, a warm off-white that leans brown. This is the lightest dry brush yet, and it is for everything we've painted so far. The stone, the wood, the doors. This is the final highlight for all of them. Be sparing, less is more. And remember that it is far easier to add paint than it is to remove it or correct mistakes. So tread lightly and be reserved in your application. Before I can move on to the wash, there are a few other little details to take care of. That includes painting in the glass on the lanterns. I decided on a dark sea blue for this. I know you'll mostly see people painting these lanterns and the torches as being lit. You'll see a lot of bright yellows and oranges. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, this is likely to be used as an abandoned mine. No one is coming down here to fill the lanterns with oil. They're burned out, like the torches. And like all of us since about 2020. I'm also just not a big fan of OSL effects. That's object source lighting, if you don't know. It can look good, but it often doesn't, and I just feel it would change the mood from creepy abandoned mine to something brighter and more cheerful. That's just not what I'm going for. Next up is a mid-tone silver on all of the metal. This was Shadow Steel Silver from Reaper. It goes on all of the door hardware, the hinges, parts of the torches, the bodies of the lanterns, and the corner bracket pieces of every wall section. I also pick out all of the nails in the wood with just a little dot of it. Now we're moving on to a wash to get those nice dark shadows and add some depth. This is an oil wash, a mix of brown and black diluted with white spirits. If you haven't jumped on the oil wash train yet and you're still sticking with acrylic washes, that's fine. But this kind of project is where an oil wash does their best work. For this kind of volume, it's way cheaper than any store-bought wash you're going to get, and way better looking and more effective than the homemade stuff. With these kinds of crisp, detailed, deeply recessed textures, the oil wash will work wonders. You can already see yourself the difference it's making as it goes on. Once the wash is completely dry, I like to leave it overnight just to be sure, I take half of the floor panels and apply a green acrylic wash to the water area. Now this is Military Shader from the Army Painter. This effect is really kind of extra. I just wanted some variety in the floor panels and to emphasize it being kind of a grungy, nasty old tunnel. And once the green wash is dry, I decide to give it an extra little touch and throw some gloss varnish onto those puddles. Since there isn't a huge variety of color, I can use the glossy finish to emphasize the water features and add more variety in texture instead. And that, my friends, leaves us here. A finished Dwarven mine. I couldn't be happier with how it turned out. All the techniques were simple and easy, and sure, it was time consuming, but look at the finished product. I can't think of a faster way to get such a good effect. If it's out there, I don't know it. Now again, I must reiterate the absolute best way to purchase these is going to be through GameFound or Kickstarter. But even at their standard shelf price, there is value here. This is a great place for your PCs to find treasure, run into hidden dangers, or vile monsters. Thank you all for watching. I'd like to send some extra love to my Patreon supporters who make all of this cool stuff possible, especially my Terrain Tier supporter, Amanda Chisholm. If you want to support the channel, please share this video with a friend, or if you're in a position to do so, click the Patreon link below. I appreciate y'all, and there is more content on the way. So I'll see you on the next one.